Welcome to Family Law Talk, presented by Kirk Stange of Stange Law Firm, PC. Stange Law Firm is a family law firm in the St. Louis metro area with offices in Missouri and Illinois. Now, here's your host, Kirk Stange.
Welcome to Family Law Talk. My name is Kirk Stange, and I am one of the managing partners of Stange Law Firm. Stange Law Firm is a family law firm with offices in Missouri and with offices in Illinois in the St. Louis metro area. Well, welcome tonight. Welcome to tonight's episode of Family Law Talk with Stange Law Firm. Today's topic is an interesting one. It's called Missouri Resident Flees to Avoid Paying Child Support. Really interesting article. I think pertinent to a lot of folks out there. Definitely one that a lot of people should check out, listen to. Definitely a good episode. We'll get to that here in just a second, but I'll state before we get into the topic that the choice of a lawyer is an important decision that should not be based solely upon advertisements, and that the information you obtain tonight in the podcast is general in nature and it may not apply to specific factual or legal circumstance. Therefore, if you require legal advice, you should definitely consult with an attorney who is licensed and competent to practice law in your specific jurisdiction. All right. Well, again, welcome. Welcome tonight to Family Law Talk with Stange Law Firm. The topic is Missouri resident flees to avoid paying child support. And this is based on an article on our blog, divorcelawyerstlouismo.com, dated February 20th, 2014. And the title of the blog entry is Missouri Man Found Guilty After Fleeing Country to Avoid Child Support. So definitely a really interesting article, and I tell the listeners out there, as a follow-up to tonight's podcast, you should definitely go and read that article. It gives a lot of good information, and will definitely help summarize what we're about to talk about this evening. And then this article references an article in the Kansas City Star, dated February 12th, 2014. The title of that article is Unpaid Child Support Lands Former Kansas City Man in Federal Court. And there's a link to that article from divorcelawyerstlouismo.com. So if you go to divorcelawyerstlouismo.com and you find the article dated February 20th, titled February 20th, 2014, titled Missouri Man Found Guilty After Fleeing Country to Avoid Child Support, you can find a link to the Kansas City Star article. All right, so all that said, let's give kind of a summary of what happened here in this particular case. And I'm not going to mention the name of the individual who's referenced in the article. It's in the article. The Kansas City Star reported it, but I'm not going to mention the gentleman's name here on the podcast because it's really not pertinent and really not relevant. But, I mean, here's the deal. Apparently a 60-year-old man who lived in Kansas City, Missouri, was ordered to pay $1,500 a month in child support in 1996, and apparently this was ordered in the Jefferson County Circuit Court. The child now lives with his mother in Utah, but the father in this case apparently spent a lot of time in Thailand after the child support order was entered, and was apparently in the hotel industry. And from reading the article in the Kansas City Star, it sounds like he's doing fairly well. And again, I'm just basing what I'm saying on what's in the Kansas City Star, and the press doesn't always get it right. But if we believe what's in the article, apparently this gentleman is doing fairly well. He apparently had in a bank account in 2010 $99,000, and as he was entering the U.S. from Thailand in 2012, apparently he had $7,800 with him. So in this particular case, it appears as if we're talking about a gentleman who had some money that he could have allocated to the child support if he had chosen to do so, but it looks like he just didn't do it. But this gentleman goes to Thailand, according to this article, and just stops paying his $1,500 a month child support that he's ordered to pay. And according to the article in the Kansas City Star, he apparently admits that he'd rather go to jail than pay his child support. So, I mean, who knows what all the facts are of this case and what would cause this individual to feel that way, but apparently those were his sentiments, that he'd rather go to jail than pay his child support. So he just didn't pay to the tune of accruing arrears in the amount of $164,891 in unpaid child support, which obviously is an astronomical sum of money. And like I said, he just didn't pay it. And then according to the article, he tried to come in through Los Angeles at the international airport there in 2012. And as he entered, it looks like he was arrested, and, they brought him to prison, and now he's facing charges in federal court relative to what he did, which is not pay the child support, flee the country, and it doesn't appear as if this is going to be a positive outcome for him if we believe these facts. According to the article, not only is he on the hook for the unpaid child support that he didn't pay, but he's looking at 2 years in prison, a $250,000 fine and restitution. So not a good deal, not a good situation, not a place a lot of folks would want to be, which is owing that kind of money on a child support order that was $1,500 a month out of the gate. So that's the scoop, and that's really the tone and tenor of the article. So to kind of then morph into what I want to talk about tonight in terms of the podcast is this, which is a lot of folks out there are ordered to pay child support. And obviously, if you're ordered to pay child support, you got to comply with a court order. If you don't comply with a court order, you face what this gentleman is facing, which is jail time, charges. You get interest tacked onto that back child support, and it's just not a particularly good situation. So, to the listeners out there, if you're ordered to pay child support, I mean, you've got to pay that child support. It's a court order, and you got to abide by a court order. That's a scoop on the front end. Past that, what I tell all the listeners out there is this, is if you're going through a child support case, it's really critical that you have an attorney who can help you through your situation. And we're talking an attorney who's handled child support cases in the past, knows the intricacies of how child support computations are calculated. And if that happens, then most child support awards will be entered in a manner that's really commensurate with the income of the parties, in a manner that's fair, that ensures that the children of the parties will be taken care of. But on the flip side, that the moms and dads out there who have to pay child support will have enough money themselves in which they can live. And so to the listeners out there, if you're going through a child support case, it's really critical that you have an attorney help you out through the case. Don't represent yourself. Don't let these cases go through the Division of Child Support Enforcement where you just, send in some paycheck stubs and not have representation. If you do that, you're looking at having potentially an egregious child support amount that you can't pay. And if you can't pay the child support, very bad things can happen. At our firm, we always tell clients, there's really a few specific debts that you want to make sure that you pay in life. And one of those, obviously, is your taxes. You got to pay your taxes. If you don't pay your taxes, you get in big trouble. In terms of student loans, at least the way the laws are currently situated, if you don't pay your student loans, that's a big problem. You can't wipe those in bankruptcy, so you got to pay those student loans. But on top of it, child support, spousal support, if you're ordered to pay it, you really just have to comply with the court order and pay it. And that's why it's just critical on the front end that you have an attorney helping you out to make sure that whatever the amount you're ordered to be paid is fair. And then what I tell the listeners out there is this, on the back end, if something happens, if something changes, and if the support amount you're ordered to pay is something you can no longer afford to pay, it's really critical in those situations that you do this, which is hire an attorney to file a modification. If a modification's filed, the child support numbers can be modified in such a way that you're able to pay that child support obligation without having arrears, without getting in trouble with the court, without potentially facing charges. So really critical out there to the listeners that, if you're ordered to pay an amount you can't afford to pay, you really have to file a modification. I know what a lot of listeners think is, well, as it is, I can't afford to pay my support, so how am I going to pay for an attorney to help me modify the support? And obviously, in a lot of respects, that makes sense. It's certainly understandable, but on the flip end, if you just don't pay, what you're looking at is a situation where you potentially face charges, where you can be held in contempt of court. And this is truly one of those situations where I tell listeners out there that maybe you feel like you can't afford an attorney, but this is definitely a situation where you can't afford not to get one in order to modify the judgment so that the numbers, at least in which you order to pay, is something you can afford to pay. And then obviously in the extreme cases, I mean, you can't flee to avoid paying child support. You know, if you flee, the truth is what happened to the gentleman in this article is what almost always happens, which is at some point, the law's going to catch up to you, and then you put yourself in a situation where you get charged with a felony, end up in jail, and that's not a good situation, and definitely one that I would not recommend for any of the listeners out there. So make sure you pay your child support obligations and abide by court orders. So that is the topic here tonight. I appreciate all the listeners being online. Again, as a follow-up to tonight's podcast, again, I direct the listeners out there to divorcelawyer.stlouismo.com and check out our blog article dated February 20th, 2014, titled Man Found Guilty After Fleeing Country to Avoid Child Support. Definitely an interesting article, definitely one that I tell the folks to read if child support's an issue in your particular case. So thanks for all the listeners for tuning in. Stay tuned for our next exciting episode of Family Law Talk with Stange Law Firm. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Family Law Talk with Kirk Stange. Visit StangeLawFirm.com for more about today's topic, or to put Stange Law Firm to work for your family today.
How's your money feeling? It's about to feel happier with a certificate from Happy Money's partner, Michigan State University Federal Credit Union. Elevate and increase your savings with 18-month terms and only a $500 minimum. And the happiest part? MSU FCU certificates yield 4.5% APY annual percentage yield. Now that's a happier side of money. Elevate your savings. Go to happymoney.com/MSUFCU. That's MSUFCU. Funds insured up to $250,000 by NCUA. The APY is accurate as of the 12/1/2023 dividend declaration date. Early withdrawal penalties do apply. Fees may reduce earnings on the account. Any monthly withdrawals or transfers reduce earnings.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.